So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Today, we're going to be taking a look at some news and rumors around the Detroit Lions organizations. News and rumors that could very heavily impact the 2023 Detroit Lions NFL season, and rumors that range from signing and making a big splash in free agency to players Aaron Glenn has high hopes for and high expectations for going into the 2023 season. And then we'll wrap it up with the newest and most recent trade made by the Detroit Lions. So, with that being said, without any further ado, let's get right on into taking a look at the Detroit Lions' newest news and rumors. Now, of course, DeAndre Hopkins was released by the Arizona Cardinals a few days ago, right? He's a player that has been a long-time NFL wide receiver that has been at the top of the game. There were points in his career he was talked about as the best wide receiver in the entire NFL, and even though he's slowed down statistically over the last couple of years, he has not fallen off to the point where he is not a top 15 to 20 wide receiver still. He could still put up phenomenal numbers for a quarterback and still help a team reach the playoffs and reach the Super Bowl. Now, Josh Pascal is a player that a lot of Lions fans had high hopes for in the 2022 season and never really panned out, right? He was dealing with some injuries early, got back on the field, found his way off the field again due to some injuries and some sorenesses, got back on the field and looked really good, and then the season ended, right? The Lions had a lot of rotations at that defensive line, and Josh Pascal just couldn't quite find a consistent role in the defense. However, Aaron Glenn has talked a lot about Josh Pascal this past offseason, and I think that there's a lot of hope going into 2023, so we're going to touch on that in a little bit. And then, of course, the big trade alert, the trade that the Detroit Lions made a few days ago to help improve their roster and strengthen their core. So, starting off with DeAndre Hopkins, I think everybody knows who DeAndre Hopkins is, but I don't think they know how good he was last season. Unfortunately, was suspended for 7 games after using PEDs, but when he returned to play, was one of the better wide receivers in football. At 31 years old, 6'1", 212 pounds, DeAndre Hopkins last year totaled 717 yards and 3 touchdowns in the 9 games that he did end up playing for the Arizona Cardinals. He averaged almost 10 targets per game and was really the focal point of the Arizona offense that didn't have very much left to offer. Now, that 717 yards put him on pace in a 17-game season for over 1,400 yards and a good solid number of touchdowns. And although I haven't seen a necessarily reliable source like Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport tweet this out or say this, there has been a lot of speculation. There has been a couple of rumors around Twitter and around the NFL world that the Lions are doing their homework and are interested in the possibility of signing DeAndre Hopkins to a contract and bringing him in to be a Detroit Lion. Now, there's a lot of people that are for this, and there's a lot of people that are against this, right? There's a lot of people that look at it and say, okay, it's DeAndre Hopkins, right? A player that last year was on pace to put up 1,400 yards had he played the entire season and can still be an absolutely elite wide receiver. And then there are players, and there are people saying, hey, this is an older wide receiver, doesn't really fit the bill, doesn't really fit what Brad Holmes does, doesn't really fit the Lions culture very well, and it just probably isn't going to fit what DeAndre Hopkins is looking for right now either. So it's just not a very likely scenario. And I think that there's some truth to both sides. I think that, yes, while in the past Brad Holmes has been very hesitant to sign big name free agents, he wasn't very hesitant this offseason. He did sign a big running back to a big contract. He did sign Cam Sutton to a big cornerback contract. And I don't think he's going to be afraid to push for a player like DeAndre Hopkins, right? A player that is very dedicated to the game, a player that has been on the field for a long time, a player that, has produced with a lot of subpar quarterbacks, Jared Goff likely being the best quarterback he's ever going to play with, unless, it's either him or Deshaun Watson. And it's a very interesting system. Now, there's a lot of people that believe that DeAndre Hopkins is not a fit for Detroit because he doesn't have the separation numbers. But I think that DeAndre Hopkins' separation and route running is really an underrated part of his game. Taking a look last year, he averaged 2.8 yards of separation per route run. And compared to some of the other players in the NFL that are known for being separators or known for getting open, he stacks up pretty well, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown and Khalif Raymond last year both averaged 3.1 yards of separation per route run, which is in the top of the NFL as far as players that got a certain amount of targets, a certain amount of routes actually ran. But then you go down to some other elite wide receivers as far as route running is concerned. And you have guys like Stephon Diggs, who is arguably the best route runner in the NFL, who had averaged 2.8 yards of separation, the exact same as DeAndre Hopkins, right? Chris Olave, a rookie that is known for his route running, a rookie that is known for his separation, averaged 2.7 yards of separation the entire season a year ago. So DeAndre Hopkins is not a bad separator. He would give Jared Goff room for error. And even if he's not covered, or even if he's not separating, even if he is covered, he's still a player that can go up and get the football. He's still a player that can go out muscle players and moss players to the football, which is a trait in a player that the Lions don't currently have. Right? DeAndre Hopkins would add a red zone target. He'd add an X wide receiver that they don't currently have. And yeah, you might say, oh, he doesn't fit the mold of what the Detroit Lions like at wide receiver. That is true. He's not the 6'4" guy like DJ Chark. He doesn't run the 4.3s like Chark or Tyrell Williams, but DeAndre Hopkins is a legitimate X wide receiver, something the Lions have been looking for a long time since Brad Holmes took over, and he can still be that guy for a year or two. Now, as far as whether I think the Detroit Lions should sign DeAndre Hopkins or not, I think as long as it's a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal that is very heavily front-loaded, I think the Lions can make it work. I don't want them to sign a player to a contract that's going to prohibit them from extending Jonah Jackson or, Jonah Jackson or Amon-Ra St. Brown or any of the other rookies that have contracts coming up very, very soon. But if it's a 1-year deal with all the cap space you have remaining, I don't see any harm in signing DeAndre Hopkins, even if it's to a little bit of a larger contract. If it's only for this season or for next 2 years with a front-loaded contract, so most of the money's off the books this year, I don't see the harm in adding another weapon for Jared Goff and adding another elite playmaker for Goff to go out and play with. The Lions still have $15-16 million after their draft class, so they have room to make it work. I just don't know if DeAndre Hopkins is going to make it work and want to come to the Detroit Lions. Now, taking a look at Josh Paschal. Josh Paschal is a player that, again, a lot of people had a lot of high hopes for. It's a player that a lot of people, being a top 50 pick and a player that was projected in the mid to late first rounds a season ago by several analysts, didn't quite live up to the hype, right? He did play in 10 games a season ago, but was really heavily injured, never really saw his way consistently onto the field, and was never able to really consistently make an impact. Last year, played in 10 games for the Lions, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, and 6 pressures. He didn't play bad. In fact, I thought he played very well when he was on the field and did a lot of things that don't show up on the stat sheet, but he didn't quite play to the caliber of a top 50 pick, didn't quite play to the caliber of a first round or borderline first round pick. But Aaron Glenn this offseason has talked a lot about different players. He's talked a lot about players that he thinks should take big steps, a lot of players that are going to have heavy roles in the defense. And he keeps coming back around to Josh Paschal, saying that he has high expectations, that I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by Paschal in 2023, and that he's just a player that a lot of people have kind of forgotten about, a lot of people have kind of given up on, but has a lot of ceiling left, has a lot of room left to grow, and can develop into a really, really good pass rusher for the future of the Detroit Lions. Now, getting on to the final piece of news and rumors, the Lions made a trade the other day. And it's a trade that kind of, weirdly enough, shook up the NFL despite not being a premier player or a premier pick being traded. And that was the trade of Riley Patterson from the Jacksonville Jaguars to the Detroit Lions. Now, the Detroit Lions ended up sacrificing a 2026 7th round pick in order to acquire Riley Patterson and essentially skip the waiver wire market, right? They're sitting right now 18th overall in waiver wire order. So the likelihood of Riley Patterson making it through waivers and becoming a Detroit Lion without trading a pick is really, really unlikely, right? A kicker that last year made 87.8% of his field goals and 91.8% of his extra points, a kicker that was 2 for 3 beyond 50 last season, is a kicker that will find a job in the NFL. And that was what Riley Patterson did a season ago. And even throughout his career, those are his career numbers. And last year, he was 2 for 3 from beyond 50. He was over 90% kicking for the Detroit Lions 2 seasons ago and was right around that 86%, 85% kicking range, whereas Michael Badgley was below that last season for the Detroit Lions. I think the Lions went from having no kickers last season, no kickers that they really felt confident in, to now having two. Now, I wasn't a big fan of the Lions releasing Riley Patterson last offseason. I thought he was the better kicker. I thought he was the better option for the Detroit Lions. And then ended up moving on. They ended up, giving his spot to somebody else, and that kicker didn't end up working out. But I think that mistake ended up costing the Lions a couple of different games, right? I think it definitely cost them in Minnesota. I think it cost them at least several points in New England. And there were several games in that 1-6 stretch where one big kick could have made the difference between winning and losing, right? One big kick could have been the difference of swinging momentum in a game and helping the Lions come back, or pulling the score within one, or, helping the Lions reach an actual victory instead of a very close, hard fought loss. And now I think they have two. Right, I think Michael Badgley, at worst case scenario, was going to be the same kicker he was last year, kicking around 83%, being a reliable kicker and being a guy that the Lions can win football games with and trust. But best case scenario, I think Riley Patterson wins the job. Riley Patterson continues a really good NFL career of kicking at 87.8% of field goals and 98.1% of extra points in his career. And the Lions now have a reliable kicker. They're bringing back somebody that they know. They're bringing back somebody that they trust. And they're bringing back somebody that can not only push for a starting spot, but improve the kicking position from where it is right now. So the Detroit Lions made that trade. They did sacrifice a 2026 7th-round pick. But at the end of the day, that's a 7th-round pick 3 years in the future. And for all we know, that pick could have been spent on a reliable kicker anyway. So you're just getting your kicker 3 years in advance for essentially nothing at all, just to skip 18 spots ahead in the waiver wire. So with that being said, those are the Detroit Lions' latest news and rumors. Let me know down in the comments below how you feel about DeAndre Hopkins, how you feel about Josh Pascal, and what you think about the Detroit Lions trading a future 7th-round pick for kicker Riley Patterson. I'd be very curious what you guys have to say and what you guys think. If you enjoyed the content, please make sure you get down below and subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on bell notifications so you never miss a Detroit Lions upload. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you both so very much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions!